손 잡는 것도 지금 손가락 걸치고
A wedding rehearsal. The big day is still a few weeks ahead.
저의 이름은 주찬양입니다. 나이는 25살입니다. 한국 나이로.
사이즈 큰데?
Chan Yang, with her fiancé Xin Young and mother, is sampling the menu and venue for her wedding banquet, which will take place here soon. Just a few years ago, Chan Yang never imagined that life would take her here, to this land of such plenty. She and her family now live in Seoul, South Korea's dynamic capital city. But they're from one of the most isolated and repressive nations on earth, where she spent most of her childhood starving.
한 10년 동안, 1991년도부터 한 2000년도 그때까지는 정말 힘들었어요. 그때 많은 분들이 북에서 굶어 사망하셨고 저희 어머니 외갓견 두고 때 다 돌아가셨거든요.
Chan Yang grew up in North Korea, also known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or DPRK, which in the 1990s suffered an immense famine due to the political policies of the country's leaders. According to United Nations estimates, up to 2 million people died of starvation. North Koreans risked their lives to shoot this present-day footage inside the country.
북한이 본래 공산주의, 그 사회주의 계획 경제 아래에 그 배급 체제, 공급제로 이루어지는 그런 제도였는데 배급 체제가 잘 이루어지지 않았어요. 그래서 항상 어머니하고 아버지가 저희 배를 채워주시기 위해서 그 조금 작게 있는 나달에 쌀 이렇게 시라지라고 해가지고 야채 있잖아요. 정말 많이 섞어가지고 쌀밥은 생산도 못했고 옥수수가 주식이었는데 그것조차도 이렇게 넉넉지는 않았어요. 그 당시에는.
The Kim family, who've ruled North Korea since the 1940s, have used the state to build the country's military might, including allegedly nuclear weapons, instead of feeding their people. The government both then and now runs the country with an iron fist. Any dissent penalized with torture, incarceration, or death.
North Korean people basically understand that if they express the wrong kind of thoughts, the whole family can be punished. This could mean that they're sent to, an inhospitable part of the rural countryside, or it could mean that they're actually just sent completely to a political prison camp, completely shut off from even other ordinary North Koreans. Torture is tragically just a part of a criminal investigation in North Korea. And executions also, the North Korean government uses public executions still to this day in order to send a message and to spread fear.
And because all media and internet are state-controlled, ordinary people have no access to the web or foreign press and are led to believe that this is the normal way to live. But against this backdrop of terror and control, Chan Yang's family secretly listened to radio broadcasts from the outside world.
외부 정보를 접하다 보니까 우리가 속고 살았다고 느끼게 됐어요. 그때 아버지가 우리 자식들은 이런 데서 살게 할 수 없다.
Somehow, he had to get the family out to have a chance of a decent life in South Korea.
아빠가 1차로 먼저 가지고 나머지 가족들이 이렇게 먼저 가게 되고 제가 남았을 때는 18살 그때였어요. 저는 개인적으로 그렇게 생각했어요. 나 인질처럼 남으면 가족들이 안전하게 탈북할 수 있겠지라는 그런 생각이 있었거든요. 근데 항상 보위부의 감시를 받으면서 아버지가 딸이 집에 있으니까 오지 않을까 계속 감시하더라고요.
The punishment for defectors, if they are caught, is definitely imprisonment and perhaps execution.
되게 지금도 생각하면 마음이 아픈 거는 가족들이 탈북한 다음에 정말 가족들이 무사히 탈북 성공하기를 간절히 빌었죠. 근데 한국에 아빠 엄마가 무사히 갔는데 우리 지금 분명 한나라 땅에 있는데 몇 시간이면 갈 수 있는데 같은 달을 바라보면서 갈 수 없잖아요. 그래가지고 되게 만날 수 없나 뭐 이런.
Xianyang was now on one side of the most heavily militarized border in the world, and her family on the other.
진짜 몇 시간만 차를 2시간만 타고 가면 내 가족이 있는데 못 만나. 상상해 보세요. 그래가지고 계속 달 보면서 억울했어요, 되게.
Xianyang's mother also suffered.
그 정말 자식을 두고 왔다는 그런 고통은 뭐 어디 다른 데다가 비기지 못하겠더라고요. 밥도 뭐 대한민국의 진수성찬을 차려놔도 그게 맛이 없고, 그러니까 정말 잠도 자도 말편잠 못 자고 악몽에서 헤매죠.
The tragic division of the two Koreas took place decades ago, when the peninsula was torn apart by one of the most brutal civil wars the world has seen. After mounting hostilities during which the United Nations tried to maintain peace, in 1950, communist North Korea, supported by the Soviet Union, invaded the south. The United Nations Security Council intervened, dispatching both a ceasefire order and a UN force to counter the invasion. For 3 years, both diplomats and troops struggled to restore peace. Eventually, a 2-mile-wide buffer zone was established between the two sides. But, despite the ceasefire, the two countries are technically still at war with each other. Xianyang and her family are not the only ones to have been separated by the division. 94-year-old Mr. Gang fled from north to south during the war. He left his family behind and then had no contact with any of his loved ones in North Korea for 60 years. Today, he tells his story to Marzuki Darasman, an independent expert. Mr. Darasman is tasked by the United Nations Human Rights Council to investigate violations of people's rights by the North Korean regime, such as the separation of families from their loved ones.
Family reunion should not be seen as a humanitarian issue. It's a human right in itself. 60,000 families known to be separated. We are appealing and pushing the South Korean government also to give it the highest priority, actually, in reaching out to the North Koreans.
전 세계에서 가족이면서 서로 연락도 못하고 만나지도 못하고 하는 그런 지역은 아마 한반도가 유일하다라고 생각이 됩니다.
Ha-moo Jin from the South Korean Ministry of Unification says some 6 to 7 million people on both sides remain separated from loved ones.
남북이 이산가족 문제를 본격적으로 논의하기 시작한 것은 1970년대부터입니다.
And thanks to these efforts, there has been some progress. Mr. Gang was chosen to take part in a reunion of divided families, one of just 20 such meetings since 2000. Family members from the south, most of them now in their 80s, travel to the north to meet their long-lost loved ones. Mr. Gang, who'd applied to meet his sister, found instead that he had a son he didn't even know existed, who'd been born to his former wife.
그러니까 얼굴에 그 향수라든가 어디 그 모습이 다 비슷하더라고. 그래 그 결국 알아본 내용적으로 가서는 자식이 확실하다는 걸 알게 되는 거죠.
The family spent 2 days together under highly supervised conditions before, once again, being wrenched apart. Many of them are now so elderly they know the chance of ever seeing their loved ones again is remote.
그래 반갑게 만나고 그래서 헤어졌는데 그때 짧은 시간이나마 그래서 만나서 반갑고 빨리 통일됐으면 얼마나 좋겠느냐 기대를 하고 있는 겁니다.
Mr. Darasman also seeks an end to the division of the countries and the suffering of the people.
This is a system that has no parallel in the modern world in terms of its hold on its own people, in terms of its massive scale of human rights violations, and in terms of its totalistic control of the very lives of its individual citizens.
Barred from entering North Korea, Mr. Darasman visits neighbouring countries. On this visit, he's in South Korea to gather information on the situation and to bring an end to the ongoing injustice. He meets people like Mr. Gang, as well as high-level officials. Today, he's at the Ministry of Unification, which has responsibility for reuniting the two Koreas.
Good morning. Thank you.
Then with a non-governmental organisation. And with the help of such organisations as Liberty in North Korea, which helps defectors escape and settle in the south, he meets with North Koreans who tell first-hand stories of life on the other side. Tonight, in a meeting held at the UN Human Rights Office in Seoul, he meets young people. Among them is Chan Yang. Chan Yang explains how, after 3 years of separation from her family, she finally escaped.
두만강을 넘을 때 저는 그 헤엄을쳐서 넘었어요. 그 국경 지역에서 그 북한 쪽 국경 경비대 군인이 저를 도와줬거든요. 왜냐하면 아빠가 벌써 다 이렇게 돈을 쓰셨으니까 두만강을 일단 그렇게 넘어서 중국에 가게 됐죠.
She underwent a dangerous onward journey through China. If North Koreans are caught, the Chinese authorities, against international agreements, usually send them back to North Korea.
탈북했던 거를 들키게 되잖아요. 그러면 저 같은 경우는 거의 완전 사형감이죠. 완전.
And then on to Thailand, where she was transferred to South Korea and finally reunited with her family.
제가 처음 가족이랑 잔 다음날 아침에 눈을 못 뜨겠더라고요. 그러니까 엄마가 막 부엌에서 요리를 하고 아버지 목소리도 들리고 동생들 목소리도 들리는데 눈을 못 뜨겠더라고요. 이게 막 꿈 같아서 눈을 딱 뜨면 무엇인가 막 깰 것 같은 그런 거.
질문이 시골 생활하면서
3 years have now passed, and Chan Yang's life has taken a new direction.
Are you nervous? Little bit. Exciting.
Okay.
라디오를 저희가 뭐 근 10년을 들으면서 아빠가 Through my story, people can understand North Koreans' life. Even I'm on the TV show, even on the in front of camera, I'm not actress, you know. I'm just normal people from North Korea.
오늘도 귀한 손님 두 분 함께 나와 계십니다. 주찬양 자매님.
극동방송을 저희가 들으면 이해가 잘 안 되는데 아버지는 그나마 들으시더라고요.
계단 나무 위에 놓고.
저는 북쪽에 있을 때 몰래 진짜 목숨을 걸고 그 자유의 목소리를 들었던 경험이 있잖아요. 그러니까 또 다른 저 같은 사람들이 고향에 있을 것이다 라는 그런 믿음으로 저도 이거를 하는 거죠.
Juyang, actually, it's her first time to the United States, and so please give it up for Juyang.
Growing up in North Korea, accessing foreign media despite the government's restrictions.
Juyang is a great example of the value and the role that North Korean refugees can play, because she's helping South Korean and even international audiences understand a lot more than we used to about North Korea.
So I'm so happy now. Yeah, like dreaming. Thank you.
Mr. Darasman's role also includes sharing information about what's going on inside this closed state to foster the urgent need for change. As one of dozens of special rapporteurs, he and the other independent experts are mandated to investigate whether countries are upholding international human rights. And Mr. Darasman's priority now is to help bring those responsible for the violations to justice.
Begin to imagine the psychological suffering of these families. For the moment, we do have to recognize that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea continues to pose a challenge to the international community in terms of its continuing practice of totalitarian repression of its people. We do have satellite imageries that clearly corroborates the existence of these camps. Between 180 to 200,000 inmates are being incarcerated. Crimes against humanity took place and continue to take place in that country.
As well as taking part in a UN Commission of Inquiry in 2013, the reports on his findings go to the highest level, here at the General Assembly in New York.
Acts of torture and horrific ill treatment of individuals.
Mr. President, as a delegation of the country concerned, we would like once again to categorically reject the Special Rapporteur and his report on the human rights situation in the DPRK. This Special Rapporteur and his report constitute extreme manifestation of politicization, selectivity, and double standards, and have no relevance whatsoever with genuine human rights.
We did serve notice to the Supreme Leader that for crimes against humanity, these have to be stopped. Now that was in 2014. Nothing much has happened. We are now in an accountability stage. The Commission of Inquiry did recommend that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea be referred to the ICC.
The ICC, or International Criminal Court, prosecutes genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity.
And this would, of course, mean that, as is the procedure, that the ICC take up prosecutions of those at the highest level of responsibility.
Meanwhile, as high-level negotiations continue, Chanyang faces some challenges in her new life.
타임머신 타고 어디 저기 오래전 세계에서 갑자기 미래 세계로 온 느낌? 처음에는 엄청 힘들었던 것 같아요. 한국에 오니까 그냥 내가 하고 싶은 거 내가 다 이렇게 골라 놓으면 돼요. 약간 북에는 도둑하는 것도 되게 많고 막 그런데 처음 왔을 때는 대형마트 같은 데 가서도 이렇게 막 뭐를 이렇게 밀면서 거기다 이렇게 담아놓고 이렇게 해야 되는데 그런 걸 처음에 모르니까 사람들이 다 구경하고 저희를 지하철 카드 하고 이런 거는 그래도 계속 동생들인데서 배웠어요. 지금은 다 하세요. 저도 가방으로 봤죠. 저번에 봤죠. 가방으로 찍찍 이렇게 되잖아요.
현재 남북관계 상황에서 가장 중요한 것은 지난 단절된 그 관계에서 신뢰를 하루빨리 회복해 나가면서 신뢰관계를 축적하면서 협력의 길로 나아가는 게 가장 큰 과제입니다. 세계 평화와 동북아의 평화 안정을 위해서도 한반도의 통일이 꼭 필요하다고 생각이 됩니다.
The international community is not only doing something for the Koreans, but it is also the Koreans that are showing the world it will take time, but it will finally reach that moment of truth, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel there.
And preparations for Chanyang's wedding are now well underway.
네, 파란색이고
분홍색 한 건데 끝까지 달고. 북쪽에 계신 분들도 자유가 있고 이런 인권이 있고 삶을 포기하지 않고 하는 거를 깨닫고 안 보이기만 하는
렛츠고.
우리 한민족이 지금 분단돼 있지만 다시 만나게 되는 날을 향해서 이렇게 힘내서 올 수 있도록 푸시하고 싶은 그런 마음에서 하는 것 같아요, 저는.